mind. On my mind. Everything we do, everything we say, keep it moving in a better way. That's on my mind. On my mind. On my...
Yeah. So what we're really saying is that in our Caribbean context, and not to limit that it's not happening elsewhere, but it's almost like it's an invisible illness that sometimes we're punished for if we're being honest about it. And if that's the reality, then it makes sense why people stay quiet. But what does that silence actually do to them? What happens when someone keeps everything inside because they feel they can't speak? Malanne, what does this internal experience look like over time if you keep bottling it all inside?
From a therapeutic standpoint, I feel like stigma, I think Yvette pointed this out, stigma does not just happen around someone, right? It's not just external experiences. I think it begins to happen within them as well. How they internalize the information that they're receiving. What starts as external messages like, oh, you're overreacting, or just be strong, just pray about it, things like that. It slowly becomes internalized as, well, maybe I am too much, or maybe I should just deal with this on my own. Maybe I should not be thinking about things this way. Maybe I'm fine, right? And emotionally, that creates a mix of shame. It creates isolation. It creates self-doubt over time. People begin to question their own reality. So it's not just that they're struggling. It's that they no longer feel safe even acknowledging that struggle. And so that's from a therapeutic standpoint. Also, as a Jamaican woman being here in the U.S., I've seen how strength is often emphasized in our culture. We've pointed that out, right? That's a beautiful thing, but sometimes it leaves very little room for emotional expression.
So true.
So internally, stigma can feel like a conflict. I'm hurting, but I'm supposed to be strong. And that tension can lead to all those negative things: silence, emotional suppression, and even guilt for needing support. And that's a dangerous place to be.
So, Yvette, how do families and communities sometimes make this worse without even realizing it?
As a family, by the values that we say we hold as a family, and the messages that we communicate, the norms that we emphasize. And I think we're coming almost full circle to where we started in terms of, in some communities, in maybe 2-3 decades ago, for example, in Jamaica, once the term mental health or mental unwellness or mental illness was uttered, immediately the person was a mad person or was psycho. The word we used to use, or we used to hear in Jamaica, even as children, was the person psycho, then mad, and them need psychiatrists, not psychologists, because even that phenomenon is evolving in Jamaica. So the messages are clear. And of course, because we're social beings, if the norm, if what is promoted is that once there is anything of a mental nature that's not 100%, then the person is either damaged or something is off, or the person is mad, or the person just, is to be avoided. Once there is that, I don't want to be pariah socially. So if being mentally unwell means that it doesn't fall into the accepted norms and mores of the community and of my family, then I am going to want to put distance between my unwellness and myself.
Wow.
So very importantly, the messages that are communicated, and then the messages that we accept and internalize. Not only that, but let's take it at a familiar level. If someone is mentally unwell and there's not the support from the family, if there's the whispering, if there's a judgment, oh, I must something wrong with her, or almost somebody else in the family do, or that kind of thing, the kind of judgment that comes with it, then it simply means that the patterns are perpetrated.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that, oh, if I'm experiencing anything that is not physical illness or physical unwellness, it must be taboo. It must be hush hush. And I'm going to take it one step further and say sometimes, based on our spiritual orientation as families, we may be unwilling to accept mental unwellness or somebody being mentally unwell as a phenomenon or a thing that we need to address, acknowledge, address, and get help. Because, of course, if God can fix everything.
Of course, a
so
prayer.
We just have to
just
pray
need
more.
A prayer.
We just have to pray hard, and we perpetrate that kind of message, you know, within families and sometimes
communities.
in communities.
So Kyle, what patterns do you see in people who avoid getting help because of all that they're surrounded with in terms of the stigma within families and community?
The simple answer is that they get worse. That's a simple answer. They get worse. So what happens is that the symptoms, they can be masked with self-soothing. So usually because of the internal pain and emotional turmoil that's taking place, they start self-soothing with smoking or drinking or other forms of self-soothing, and it masks the pain for a time, but essentially it's still there and it lingers and other things happen and it compounds beneath the surface and they self-soothe, and there's this toxic loop and this toxic cycle of this happening. And then what starts to happen is that when there is underlying unaddressed emotional issues, they start to manifest as physical symptoms. And these are what we call psychosomatic symptoms. Right? So these are the individuals who go to the doctor for chronic pain. It's excruciating. They cannot manage. They go to the doctor. They do all the possible scans. And the doctor says, well, we can't find none. There's nothing physically wrong.
So it transcends from something psychological to actual physical pain?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what happens. So the problem gets worse, not only from a psychological level, but now manifests in a physical way.
Okay. Yeah, Malanne, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I feel like one of the biggest impacts of stigma is delay, right? Not seeking help right away. Like I mentioned at the point of discomfort, people don't usually avoid help because they don't need it, right? They avoid it because of how they think they'll be perceived. There is this fear of being labeled, like Yvette had pointed out, being labeled, being judged, crazy, mad, psycho, all these things, or even being treated differently once they speak up. So instead of reaching out early, they wait until they're overwhelmed or they're in crisis.
All right.
And like I mentioned, that's not a good place to be. Definitely and even in my own health journey, I understand what it feels like to carry something heavy and not always want to share it because of how people might respond to that. And that's what stigma does. It makes people feel like they have to choose between being supported and being judged. And unfortunately, many people choose silence.
That is so true. And as I can share also my personal journey in having been a mom that is raising 2 children physically by myself and asking for help, it's almost as if you're saying, you're not a good mother, or my grandmother did it, so why can't you do it? Or my mother did it, so why can't you do it? And it causes you to say, okay, as we mentioned before, the whole notion of being strong. You're not strong enough as a mother because others have done it. Why can't you do it? Right? So I have a comment that came in on our social media. Every time I say I'm overwhelmed, I'm told to just pray, to be strong, or to stop being dramatic. We like to label everything as being dramatic, just coming out. So over time, we find ourselves, as we have mentioned before, pushing it back, stuffing it in, holding it in so that we can get that strong label, so that we can be considered as mentally stable. And there's so many situations such as single parenting, as I mentioned before, or even mothers that are going through postpartum, or overwork, overstimulation. So many things happening in our society that we find happening over and over, causing people to feel how they're feeling now. And we have to create that environment. And that's what we're trying to do by having this episode on mental health stigma, create that environment where persons feel that it's okay to say, and it's okay for persons to listen, because it has to be both. It's communication. So it has to come from both ends, the education of what mental health stigma entails.
Before we move into the next segment of this episode of On My Mind Chat Unmuted, let's show some love for one of our panelists and the work that they're doing. Yvette Boucher Gardner, counseling psychologist and author. Her book is available on Amazon, titled Living Water for the Christian Journey, a 31-day devotional of healing. Get a copy today.